We're never going to be perfect. We're never going to do everything flawlessly. And when we accept that and are kinder to ourselves, we actually have more energy available to get stuff done.
Tell me something that you've never told anyone in an interview before because they didn't ask.
I love country music. Do you love country music?
You love country music.
I love
Okay,
country
so name a
music.
few of your favorite country music
I
artists.
love it.
What about Kenny Chesney?
Love Kenny Chesney.
Really?
I even love Kenny Rogers. It doesn't matter how hawky and unsophisticated.
How did you come to love country music?
I just kind of started hearing it when I first came to New York. And now my iPod is full of country music songs, some of them old, some new. And my youngest daughter, who's a painter, also loves country music. So I sometimes borrow her iPod.
Do you have a favorite lyric?
I mean, country music lyrics are so weird when you concentrate on them. Like beer, do you know the beer for my horses?
Whiskey for my men, beer for my horses.
Whiskey for my men, beer for my horses by Toby Keith.
Have you ever fed beer to a horse, Arianna?
No, and I haven't even fed whiskey to my man.
In your book, The Sleep Revolution, you talk about your life's trajectory into sleep and why sleep has become such an important thing. And one of the things that you have mentioned is that you're getting 8 hours of sleep 95% of the time.
Yes.
How are you doing that?
I find that it makes me infinitely more productive, healthier, and happier. So first of all, when you're healthier, and your immune system is not suppressed, which is what happens when you're sleep deprived, you are much less likely to get a cold, the flu, all these things that obviously take us off work or reduce our productivity at work. Then I find that I make decisions faster. My decisions are better because there's a clear connection now between sleep deprivation and cognitive impairment, when you make decisions as though you are drunk. And I think everybody can identify with making bad decisions when you are exhausted. And the other thing is that I think we waste so much energy when we are triggered by things, when we are stressed unnecessarily by the obstacles and the challenges of the day, which are inevitable. And when I have gotten my full night's sleep, I take them all in my stride. I see it as part of life, and it doesn't really affect me the way it affects me when I'm sleep deprived.
In order to maintain that 8 hours of sleep, what % of requests do you say no to?
Well, I say no to a lot of things, but the most important thing is we need to create a ritual for ourselves in order to slow down our brains.
And what's your ritual?
My ritual is to turn off all my devices 30 minutes before I'm going to go to sleep and charge them outside my room, to have a hot bath with Epsom salts every night.
Wow, this sounds very luxurious, Arianna.
And candlelight.
So you do every single night. You do a candlelit bath with Epsom salt?
Yes, and I use that time to take off my makeup.
Well, I have to say, I appreciate the extra push that you're giving in your book to people to really think about getting more sleep. At the same time, I personally struggle with that whole notion because I think about my own career and the fact that I don't think if I was getting 8 hours of sleep a night that I would be sitting here interviewing you. I just don't think it would have happened.
I would beg to disagree. I wish I could walk through a day in your life and see what could you give up to allow you to get 8 hours. How many do you get now?
Now I'm getting about 6, but when I started my career, for example, in investment banking, I was getting 3 to 4 hours a night. And as I was reading your book, I was thinking about this email I got from my boss. It was on a Saturday morning at 9 a.m. And I was, for the first time in a year or something like that, sleeping in till
Yes.
9 a.m. So I'd been out of commission, off email for about 6 hours. He wrote me an email and he said, I don't know how it's humanly possible that I have not been able to reach you for the last
That's
6 hours.
amazing.
The expectation was really, you're in the office until the work is done and you're back the minute you need to be back. And that was not allowing for any more than 4 hours of sleep at the time.
But you do realize that the world has changed. So right now we're in the middle of a culture shift where the kind of behavior you are describing still exists, but it's becoming less and less common. And especially as the big battle now is for recruitment and retention of talent. Employers and HR departments know that if you treat employees like that, you're not going to get the best.
If you, over the course of your life, were only sleeping 8 hours, do you think you would have accomplished all the things that you have accomplished?
1,000%.
You would do
categorically. Because
Really?
if you want to sit down with me, I will tell you all the mistakes I made. It will take a long time.
What's the biggest mistake you made?
I think there were so many mistakes around, mostly what happens in my head. I think the biggest mistake to make is when the obnoxious roommate living in our head goes over and over and over something, which can be as trivial as, I don't think I answered that question the right way. Or, I don't think I wore the right thing. I don't think my hair, it's like, it can be so trivial and so stupid that it's almost embarrassing to recount it, but it's so draining. And if that energy was available to me to achieve, as opposed to beat myself up, I would have done a lot more. I really believe that.
How do
so
you shut that voice
profoundly.
down, though? It can't just be that you sleep 8 hours a night.
Well, it's the foundation. I mean, obviously, you also need to recognize that that voice is not you, that voice is not the truth, and treat it with the appropriate amount of humor or contempt, depending on what works with that voice. But there's no question, and again, it's not what I'm saying, it's the conclusion of all scientists, that when we are sleep deprived and exhausted, all these emotional triggers are activated. So it's much harder to deal with whatever it is that stresses us.
Do you have a mantra or something that you say internally to shut that person down?
I
That
think
voice inside?
the way I deal with my voice, incidentally, I have to say that that voice now only makes guest appearances.
Really?
Yes.
So when you say
It
guest
works.
appearances, how
Meaning
frequent?
like every 3 months, maybe.
Every 3 months you
Well,
have that self-doubt voice in your
something
head.
happens. Oh, you know, it can be. I remember the last time it happened. I was going to do the Charlie Rose show, and I was in the car running late. I started late, and there was traffic. And on
Sounds
top of
familiar.
it, I know Charlie gets really mad when you're late, which is very justified because he's running a tight ship. So the voice was going, I can't believe you left so late. I have no idea why you left so late. This is so irresponsible. This is really like beating me up, like the worst possible boss, you know?
Right.
And so by the time I got there, I was so exhausted from that voice. And of course, I was completely flustered.
How did the interview go?
It
You
was
were happy
fine.
with
I
it?
think it could have been better.
You think it could have been better?
Yes, absolutely.
So
I
then
mean,
you look back on that and say, I would have been better off if I had just...
But here's the good news.
Yes, what is the good news?
The good news is that I said to myself, it could have been better, but I moved on. You know, we're never going to be perfect. You know, we're never going to do everything flawlessly. And when we accept that and are kinder to ourselves, we actually have more energy available to get stuff done.
To that woman or man who says, I'm really sorry, but I do have to work 18, 19 hours a day. I have to work 2 jobs, and there's just no way I could be getting more sleep. What's your advice?
I actually held a clinic in Harlem and invited people from the community who are exactly in the position you are describing, who had to work around the clock. But in fact, what I found out was fascinating, that they were very unaware of the importance of sleep, and they really had bought into the cultural delusion that if only they were like smarter or more energetic, they could really get 4 hours and do great. So let me give you just one example that sums up very much what I was told by dozens of people. There was this woman in her 30s. She was very overweight. She had diabetes, and she had 2 jobs. And she said to me, when I come back from my second job, she was a pastry chef and a babysitter. She said, this is my time to watch my shows. And she said, I watch television for 4 hours. I fall asleep with the TV on. At some point, the TV wakes me up, and then I can't go back to sleep. So I go to the kitchen and have something sweet. So you can see the vicious cycle. So we started working with her, and she began to change her habits. Now, she doesn't have a better job yet, but her health is so much better. She's losing weight. So the truth of the matter is that the more difficult our life is, the more we need to be resilient. And sleep is the gateway to resilience. It's free and it's available. There is a lot else we need to do. We need to raise the minimum wage, and we need to make more good jobs available. But this is something which can happen right now. Aetna has given Fitbits to all its employees and has asked them if they want to opt into the program to measure how much sleep they get, and if they get more than 7 hours for 20 nights, they don't have to be consecutive, they get $300. And what is great about that is not just the financial incentive, it's the message that it's sending to employees, that getting enough sleep is not just good for your health, it's actually good for the health of the bottom line, because it reduces healthcare costs and improves productivity. That's very different from the message that employers have been sending in the past.
Squeezing out productivity, every efficiency possible.
Exactly. And the other thing that's fascinating, the McKinsey Consulting Group has done an amazing study, which they accepted in the Harvard Business Review, and the headline is the proven link between effective leadership and sleep. Now, you would not have expected that from McKinsey, right?
Which I'm sure a number of the employees working on that probably slept about 4 hours a night
No,
in order
actually,
to get it
the
done.
person who I met, the main author of the piece, who is identified in the piece as a McKinsey sleep specialist. And what was fascinating is that they walked through the science of what happens to the prefrontal cortex of the brain, where leadership functions are housed, and how degraded it is when we're sleep deprived.
So do you feel like things have changed internally for you in your prefrontal cortex since you've been sleeping
I feel
more?
that I can walk in here and I'm, presented every day with problems, and I can find solutions through problems much more easily. I can move on when something difficult happens. I can handle it and move on to the next thing without carrying it with me. And it affects not just how I operate as a leader here, but the culture that we have built.
I want to talk a little bit about your history. You were born in Greece. You moved to the UK when you were 16. You went to a phenomenal university for college, and you have essentially had this meteoric rise throughout your life. I wonder, along that journey, where did you face rejection, and how did you deal with it?
Oh, first of all, there is nothing meteoric.
Really?
As you are living through it,
As you're living through it?
Yes.
So it didn't feel that way?
It may look meteoric as you're looking back, but as you're living through it, I think it's so important to stress that every successful life has had failures along the way.
I agree.
One of mine, in my I wrote my first book at 23, and it was a big success. But then I wanted to write a book on the crisis of political leadership, and it was a book nobody seemed to want to publish. So it was rejected by 36 publishers. By then I had run out of money, and the obnoxious roommate was beginning to question whether I was really a writer or whether the first book was a fluke. And then I was living in London at the time, and I happened to be walking depressed down St. James's Street, and I saw a Barclays Bank, and I walked in. and I asked to see the bank manager and asked for a loan. You know, I literally had no assets, I had nothing, and for some reason the manager gave it to me.
He said that yes on the spot.
He said yes, and it was like, and what is amazing about that is that when you look back on your life, often in the darkest moments, something happens, something unexpected happens. It's almost like in fairy tales when you have the helpful animals appearing to help the hero or the heroine out of a dark forest. Well, that bank manager, whose name was Ian Bell, I still remember it, was like a helpful animal, helping me at that time to keep things together for another 3 or 4 rejections, and then finally an acceptance.
So thanks to Ian Bell.
I sent him a holiday card every year.
You do? That's fantastic. What does he say in return?
He sends me a holiday card back.
I was at the Marriott
Oh my
recently,
God.
and I found this on my pillow. Is this at every Marriott?
Yes, on every pillow.
On every pillow. I don't know
mirror.
if I was allowed to take it or not,
Oh,
but I
yes,
had
of
to
course.
take it. And it's 8 tips for a better sleep, which is, I mean, this is fantastic.
I know.
How great is this for
It is
you
so
and for
great.
people falling asleep?
And you know what? It's been amazing. I've had friends from all around the country sending me pictures of the 8 tips on the pillows. Women have to stop thinking they have to wear something new every day,
Yes, please.
especially with social media. So I'm doing a huge campaign for repeats.
When's the last time you wore what
Oh
you're
my
wearing?
God, this is so old. This is like 5 years old.
I have an admission. This I wore last week on
You
World
are-
News. I was
Oh.
actually, when I put it on this morning, I was like, oh, you know, I just wore this on TV, but oh well.
Perfect. I love that.